Tom, how significant is the concern that U.S. air defense may not be able to intercept many of these Iranian drones?
It is significant and it is growing, Pam. Wolf, let's take a look at what the U.S. is doing right now. They are fielding a previously unused military asset. And I'm going to show you a life-size model that we bring into our virtual studio here. This is the Lucas drone, low-cost unmanned combat attack system. It is, as you can see, about 10 feet long, about an 8-foot wingspan. It weighs about 180 pounds. It's powered by a propeller back there, which means very low heat signature, hard to track, and up front it can carry about 40 pounds of high explosives. It is also, interestingly, based upon a clone of an Iranian drone, the Shahed 136 Kamikaze. The Iranians have been working on this for years. The U.S. got a hold of one. They had engineers take it apart and say, let's build a better version of it. That's what they have done. And yet the Iranians continue to rely on this and many other types of drones. But this one in particular, they rely on for several reasons. One, compared to a missile, which requires a great big launch platform that can be targeted and taken out, and then the missiles are no longer useful. This can be launched from the back of a truck, from the middle of a field, from a boat, compared to a missile, which requires a big production facility, which also can be targeted and destroyed. These can be made in many covert locations all over that are hard to track down. And compared to a missile, which will cost at least $1 million, sometimes several million, this is cheap, only about $20,000 per unit. So when we look at these maps out here where you see places where drones have hit or missiles have hit, every time a drone is hit, it doesn't necessarily mean just one drone was launched there. Instead, squadrons of things are launched. They send many of them in precisely because of what you said at the top, Wolf. Because if you have a system out there that can't stop all of them, you only need 10% to get through to do a tremendous amount of damage, as we have been seeing in these videos in various places. One of the concerns here is also that the cost of the systems to stop these is higher than the cost of the drones. In many ways, military analysts say the Iranians have been preparing for many years for just this type of conflict. So, though they didn't want to have a war necessarily, now that the war has come to it, their use of drones is forcing the U.S. to fight a type of battle that the Iranians would prefer, even as the U.S. tries to turn that weapon back against them.
What we're seeing play out here is essentially a war of attrition. It's the ability of the Iranians to launch missiles and drones versus the supply of U.S. and Israeli interceptors that can knock them out. Now, President Trump said a couple of days ago, and rather absurdly, that there's an unlimited supply of missiles and interceptors and munitions, and that's simply not the case. But there are some signs that the Iranians had a lot of capabilities, but it's definitely being degraded. I mean, on the first day, they launched 350 missiles. On the second day, 175. On the third, it looks like about 125, and only 50 yesterday. So there's definite signs that they're being degraded. The other thing that they're working on is the launchers, the missile launchers. They started the war with perhaps 450. The IDF is claiming perhaps at least half of them have been knocked out. But they still have a lot of drones, a lot of missiles. The drones can be very, very dangerous, and we've seen play out in Ukraine. Yeah. Of course, the Iranians are providing a lot of drones to the Russians, so it's probably going to evolve into a war of attrition. The ability of the Iranians to continue to mount attacks using their missiles, what's left of them, and their drones, and the United States racing against time to try to knock out their capabilities to deliver those munitions.
Two sources have also told CNN that at least one of America's Gulf allies is already running low on crucial interceptor munitions. Let's bring in Haley Britsky, joining us live again out of Washington. So one of the issues, Haley, with these Shahed attack drones that Iran is using is that they're designed to fly low and slow, which allows them essentially to evade air defenses. Walk us through it and walk us through what sort of options the U.S. has to be able to counter that.
Yeah, so like you said, these can sometimes evade air defense. It's a little bit easier than Iran's ballistic missiles, and we know that attack drones are frequently used by Iran and its proxies throughout the region. We've seen them target U.S. forces for quite a while now. And Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth, Chairman of the Joint Staff General Kane, apparently telling lawmakers, according to these sources, that kind of downplaying the concerns about this, but at the same time saying that they likely would not be able to catch all of them because Iran has so many of them. And I really have to iterate here how big of a deal that is, how striking of an admission that is, given the resources, the money that the U.S. has poured into the counter-drone problem. Since watching Ukraine's war against Russia, the U.S. military has been very aware of the threat of drones. They've been training on these cheaper drones, getting defense industry to build more of them so that the U.S.'s arsenal had them as well. So this was a really big issue that the U.S. military has seen coming, but essentially telling lawmakers that it was more of a problem than they anticipated. And we've seen the very real cost of this, right? Just a few days ago, 6 U.S. service members killed in what was a suspected drone strike on a facility they were working out of in a port in Kuwait. So these have very real consequences, and it certainly raises a lot of questions about how the U.S. military can better protect their forces against these kinds of drones, how what systems would be better to shoot them down. We saw for weeks leading up to this operation air defense capabilities being flowed into the Middle East, more forces, more air defenses certainly coming in the next coming days. So it raises a lot of questions that the military will have to answer about how to protect their forces and why those steps had not been taken enough leading up to the beginning of this operation.
A really important data point that they got out quite early was the idea that in terms of the one-way attack drones, the Shahids, the cheap, effective, longer range drones that you can fire for not a lot, that often are taken down by highly expensive Gulf air defense systems, that they've seen a 70+% drop in those since the early days of this conflict. I say the early days, we're 4 days in, but since the start, and that the missile attacks are now down 80% plus from that time as well. Here's the siren, I'm afraid, Becky. We have to move in as a result. And that, interestingly to me, shows that we're dealing with a potential here that the Iranian inventory is reduced, or it's been hit on the ground by this persistent set of airstrikes, or potentially that they're conserving what they do still have in order to be able to protract this conflict over a number of days. But it gives you a slight sense of the timeline, really, of what the limits on Iran might be, how the US is perceiving that. And then we had this other change they talked about as well. Let me just guide my cameraman, Luis, through here. That the United States, are moving from a focus on precision munitions to potentially being in stand-in positions, where some military experts have said that's going to enable them to use unguided munitions, dumb bombs,